Let's talk about language. Let's talk about reality. Let's talk about things that don't want to be usually spoken about by anybody. Nobody likes to talk about this stuff. Let's talk about time. What if you created a few distractions on the planet worldwide to confuse all people? Then at the same time, you introduce products into the food system which are actually psych medications or drugs or ancient alchemy. Same old tricks, just a new covalent electron added or some other atomic key subtracted or added to the equation that doesn't affect the overall effect of the substance. What if they made lithium airborne? What if they made Xanax airborne? What if they made opioids airborne? What if they made the coca plant, such as amphetamines or salts, airborne? What if they made MDMA or ayahuasca airborne? Poppy plant airborne? What if they made cacao or cocoa, same thing, caffeine airborne? What if they made a lot of the basic substances that have been used to manipulate the human brain and body for thousands of years, they changed them just slightly using chemistry and made them airborne? Or as something called perhaps niacin or thiamine, or some other substance common in the foods that we eat or in the drinks like phosphates and sulfates and other phenylalkylanes and other kind of weird things we can't even pronounce. What if there is a group of people who looked at human beings as if the person was more like a test tube or a petri dish or a, say, science experiment? Remember this. Science is silence with an invisible and silent L. And science is part of the mental governance, the governing of mental bodies, the governing of mental states, the governing of nations, and the governing of regions. How come water, simple drinking water, out of the faucet, the tap, how come it tastes different in different areas? How come some places you go, they say that there's softeners in the water? Is it to soften you? To soften your body? To create inadequacies within the biochemistry of your system? What if I told you that global manipulation is nothing new? What if I told you there's an entire group of people worldwide who is aware, more aware than most? What if I told you the militaries across the planet have unifying groups of people from nation to nation, and that the United States government has been pointed out as the group that fueled World War I, World War II, and what's happening now today to me and you? Do you understand that at the end of World War II, there was a race to get to Berlin, to get all the data collected by the so-called scientists in Germany? Russia got there, and the United States of America got there. During this time, nobody seemed to pay attention to the area we know now today as the United Arab Emirates. That area has so many production facilities to create the oil products for the world. Petroleum, black gold, old television shows in the United States called it Texas tea. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Do you believe that it's good to use human beings as test subjects for your chemicals and for your mental plans? What if I told you all of a sudden also that most people shut down the abilities that spirituality and finding God offers? What if I told you that? What if I told you that the things that the American psychiatric industry has used, quote unquote, advanced or higher education to create a society that denounces spirituality, that denounces unity among people across cultures and across diverse ethnic, spiritual, financial, and other backgrounds? The culture to separate, the culture to build walls, the culture to keep people in their lines and not let people, shall we say, cross-pollinate. Of course, unless you're looking to create a group of people who are submissive, who do what they're told, and who don't really expect much out of life except to do your labor, to do your work, and to make you have lots of time to do whatever you want, lots of money to do whatever you want, and lots of resources to do whatever you want. Now, what if I told you my personal life story involves all of that growing up here in one of the my teeth got knocked out about 8 months ago. I talk funny now. There's a lift. Sometimes I have to focus. That's what happens when you move to Washington, D.C. Well, this is my home city. I grew up nearby in the so-called social experiment called Reston, Virginia. If you want to learn about these people, go to your local diplomatic office and see who works there worldwide. Most likely in any diplomatic office worldwide, they have connections to Reston, Virginia from the decades of the 1970s and the 1980s. The United States government has been putting their people in place worldwide for hundreds of years. The creation of multiple world religions was part of the plan. The ability to use magic and honestly to travel back and forth in time, through the rifts of time and through the spaces in between space that very few people worldwide know how to do. But ancient organized societies know all about it at the top levels and at the lower levels. However, fear, people being afraid, is what maintains their secrecy and their ability to control. So let's get back to the human test tube model. After World War II, they had to move somewhere, and they moved here mostly to the United States and to a few other places as well. They learned to experiment on people. They learned to say it's immoral to have a family if you're under the age of 18. And they used the system of Christianity in the United States to create this unusual, horrific pain of fear. Not fear of God, fear of people. Although their books promote fear of God. If you're calling God Lord, Lord is a feudalistic English term, was for the local ruler of government, the English Lord. Probably the lowest level of English royalty. Let's remember that the Bible, when first published, was published by the king, not of England, the king of Great Britain, France, and Ireland. After World War II, the names of basically most countries on earth changed, or at least the borders changed. or perhaps in the colonist areas. So when you have a country like Africa, they put 2 or 3 different groups together in one country. And I say they by the powers that redrew the maps and use guns and money to do that. And let's go back to money. Money, Redskins. They call them greenbacks now, but they're really Redskins because they were money was developed, paper money, to pay people for scalps, the tops of Indians' heads, Native Americans. Let's not get into the names. Apache, Ojibwe, Aztec, Inca, Mayan. Let's not get into all the names. Algonquin, Sioux. There's so many different people and so many modern people that lived here in this whole continent. And you could travel right over the top of the earth to get here. And they controlled it with horses and steel all those years until now with super tankers and jet planes and technology that rearrange all the borders and possibilities of time and space. But guess what? About 250 years ago, they broke out of that group of people up there on the North Pole. They began to cuss all the people who we called sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And they began to cuss them and figure out how to get it past them. Thus began the circus. I worked for the oldest circus in the United States and in the world because they traveled here from Denmark. Circus Schumann transmogrified into the Big Apple Circus. Then I grew up in Reston, Virginia. Because I was taken as a baby from a family in Pittsburgh and given to another family in Pittsburgh, to a scientist family named Strass that originally came out of Butler, Pennsylvania, moved to Reston, Virginia. But first we moved to South Boston, Virginia, so we could go down to Durham, North Carolina, so my birth certificates could be faked and the paperwork could be changed. Then Westinghouse jumped in, Carnegie, George Washington University, and the experiments began on me, myself, and I, with data gathered from the Nazi regime, fueled by Prescott Bush and Getty when they created it to create World War II. Now I'm 52 years old. Joanne Strass, Joanne Mary Strass, who grew up in Millville, Pennsylvania, a borough of Pittsburgh, experimented on me my whole life. And when I recently sent her a text message naming different companies and people, she never responded and stopped sending me any help at all. And that was just about a month ago, month and a half ago. The fact of the matter is I've been experimented on my whole life. NIH, National Institutes of Health. In fact, even Dr. Robert DuPont, the former drug czar under Jimmy Carter and policymaker to basically intoxicate the planet, calling it medication, when he was working behind the scenes for the Ronald Reagan presidency here in the United States. Now I'm in Washington, D.C. I've recently attained disability benefits for the second time in my life. I basically have a very difficult time every day. The social pressures, the social landscape, all the world is a stage theater here in Washington, D.C., has decided to focus on shutting me down. Unfortunately, you're not able to do that at all ever again. And now, as the pencil-pushing nerds and scientists become afraid, the military of the planet is stepping forward, as are the financial markets. So people who view other human beings as simply products or objects to be experimented upon are evil. Those people need to be stopped worldwide. They need to stop trading human beings as babies, as the most valuable commodity on earth, and we need to end that now, immediately. I'm here in Washington, D.C. to disappear and end my life. In fact, now I'm starting my life. This is the video you just watched and you don't care. But now, maybe you do.